What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Fraunfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
This is
episode 60
of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Fraunfelter. Now, we've talked about what the name of the podcast is as the What's a Hero podcast, right? And with that, we go into things about what makes what makes a person a hero. And the heroes that we talk about on here are, they range from all sorts of different people, from police officers and firefighters and nurses and teachers and doctors and veterans. I mean, you name it, we've had them on here. There are a number of people that are heroes that have gone through the I guess the classical sense of what the hero's journey is. And there is a gentleman that was by the name of Joseph Campbell, and he summarized the hero's journey as a 3-act structure. And he wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and that 3-act structure is a departure, the initiation, and the return. Now, each one of those has a different portion. In the departure, the hero leaves the ordinary world behind. The initiation, the hero ventures into the unknown, the special world, and overcomes various obstacles and challenges. And 3, the return, the hero returns in triumphant to the familiar world. Now, you see, Hollywood will go over all these different things. And the most famous one is, let's say, Star Wars, right? Luke Skywalker, he was a kid. He was in the ordinary world. He went into the hard stuff, came out on the end of Return of the Jedi as the hero. And you see it in anything from any kind of hero things. Now, there's 12 steps to the hero's journey. Now, that's not to be confused with the 3-act structure, but the 12 steps of that hero's journey. And that is the ordinary world, the call of adventure, the refusal of the call, the meeting of the mentor, crossing the first threshold, the tests, allies and enemies, the approach to the inmost cave, the ordeal, the reward, the road back, the resurrection, and return of the elixir, or return with the elixir. Now, the ordinary world, this is where we meet our hero. Although the journey has not yet begun, first we need to establish the status quo by showing the hero living their ordinary, mundane life. It's important to lay the groundwork in this opening stage. And you see it in stories, you see it in everything you've got from, let's say, The Matrix or Star Wars or from whatever. And everybody's just a normal person, and then they get pulled out of that, whether they pull themselves out of it or somebody pulls them out. And that next step would be the call to adventure. The journey proper begins with a call to adventure, something that disrupts the hero's ordinary life and confronts them with a problem or challenge they can't ignore. And this can take many different forms. While you're looking at that and you think, okay, like I said, they either get pulled out or they get pushed into it, or they have this urge, I need to go do that. I need to go become more, and I want to go do more. Then there's that refusal. The hero chooses option A and attempts to refuse the call to adventure. This could be for any number of reasons: fear, disbelief, a sense of inadequacy, or plain unwillingness to make the sacrifices that are required. And so they're like, no, I don't want it. I don't need to do that. I just want to go do whatever, because everybody's reluctant a little bit. But a little reluctancy is understandable, because you're pulling away. You're going away from what is comfortable, what is normal, what you're used to, what you know, to things that you don't know, but it's still enticing to you, right? Then they meet that mentor. So the hero, they got cold feet, and they're like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm afraid to do it. So nothing like a little pep talk can fix it. The mentor figure appears at this point to give the hero some much needed counsel, coaching, and perhaps a kick out the door. And so they they help them out a little bit, and they push them going, and they are out doing what it is that their journey is calling them to. Then they're crossing that threshold. At this juncture, the hero is ready to leave their ordinary world for the first time. With the mentor's help, they are committed to the journey and ready to step across the threshold into the special world. This marks the end of the departure act and the beginning of the adventure in earnest. You think of, let's take a look at Lord of the Rings. They're afraid to do it. The hobbits are afraid to go out. They know they have this journey they have to go do. They're afraid to do it. However, they get their mentor in the way of Gandalf, who's like, no, you have to do it. Meet me at the Prancing Pony. Let's go, right? So there is the journey is beginning, and they get pushed into it. Now, the test, allies, and enemies. Now we are getting into the meat of the adventure. The hero steps into the special world and must learn the new rules of an unfamiliar setting while navigating trials, tribulations, and tests of will. New characters are often introduced here, and the hero must navigate the relationship with them. Will they be friend, foe, or something else? And so, as you start seeing in our stories, that we start seeing people who are developing their friendships. They're getting the people that they know. They're starting to realize who it is that they can trust, who they can't trust, who's going against them and against their journey and their challenge. And when they go through this portion, they go to the next one, which is they approach the innermost cave. This is the time to get a little metaphorical. The innermost cave isn't a physical cave, but rather a place of great danger. The most dangerous place in the special world, per se. It could be a villain's lair, an impending battle, or even a mental barrier. No spelunking is required on this one. It's just you go into it. It's the darkest place they can go, and it's where they are at. And when they're there, this is when they really see their demons manifest. They see all the different things come in, and they start realizing what it is they've gotten themselves into. Now, the ordeal is number 8, and this marks the hero's greatest test thus far. This is a dark time for them. And Campbell refers to it as the belly of the whale. The hero experiences a major hurdle or obstacle which causes them to hit rock bottom. This is the thing, either they have something coming against them or they've done something to themselves. This is the worst part that it can get. And this is the pivotal moment in their story, the main event of the second act. It is a time for the hero to come face to face with their greatest fear. It will take all their skill to survive this life or death ordeal. Should they succeed, they will emerge from the ordeal transformed. We see this time and again. They see that the hardest part in somebody's life. And we're looking at this from that of storytelling, of books and movies and TV. We see the hard part, and then they see them come out of it. The next step is the reward, or the seizing of the sword. The ordeal was a major level up moment for the hero. Now that it's been overcome, the hero can reap the reward of success. This reward could be an object, a skill, or a knowledge. Whatever it is that the hero has been struggling toward, at least the sword is within their grasp. At this moment, the hero is a changed person. They are now equipped for the final conflict, even if they don't fully realize it yet. They have all the stuff they need. They've gone through all these different things, and if they had not gone through these different things, they would not be able to now face the giant, or face the dragon, or face the main problem that they have to go face. Even though it was difficult, and they thought, why was all this happening to me? They are now facing this for this reason. Which brings us to number 10, the road back. We're now at the beginning of Act 3. With the reward in hand, it's time to exit the innermost cave and head home, but the story isn't over yet. In this stage, the hero reckons with the consequences of Act 2. All that stuff that they've done, they have to now face it. Or all the stuff that they've fought, they have to face it. The ordeal was a success, but things have changed now. Perhaps the dragon, robbed of his treasure, sets off for revenge. Perhaps there are more enemies to fight. Whatever the obstacle, the hero must face them before the journey is complete. You're like, hey, I've done my thing. I've done some horrible stuff, and I've come through it on the other end. Now I get to go. Now I'm just heading back home. It doesn't work like that. you have more to face. And this is in the stories that we see it all the time. Number 11, the resurrection. Now comes the true climax of the story. This is the hero's final test. When everything is at stake, the battle for the soul of Gotham, the final chance for evil to triumph. The hero is also at the peak of their powers. A happy ending is within sight if they succeed. There's a gentleman named Vogler who calls the resurrection stage the hero's final exam. They must draw on everything they have learned and proven again that they have really internalized the lesson of the ordeal. Near-death escapes are not uncommon here, or even literal deaths and resurrection. You keep going, and this is where you really develop. You think you're out of the woods, and you're not. It's like when you're working out, and you have that one, the first couple reps are no problem. It's that 10th or 12th or 15th or whatever where it really gets hard. That's where the growth really happens. And number 12, the return with the elixir. Evil has been defeated and the hero is transformed. It's time for the protagonist to return home in triumph and share their hard-won prize with the ordinary world. The prize is the elixir, the object, skill, or insight that was the hero's true reward for their journey and transformation. Now, like I said, I kept saying that these are things that somebody goes through when you're writing a story. When you watch a movie, you can start picking these things apart. Oh, I see how they kind of started, and they kind of dipped down in the worst part, and then they kind of climbed back and became the hero, and now they're returning triumphantly with what it is that they're doing. And you say, well, why are we talking about that? I'm talking about it because, one, this is the What's a Hero podcast. And I have a lot of people come on here and they say, well, I'm not a hero, because they don't see their life as having been something that they've gone through in this manner. They don't realize that that is what it is that has developed them to go to where they are now. Because, be honest with you, a lot of them are still in the midst of that. They're still fighting the dragon day in and day out. On today's episode, I've got somebody on who has gone every one of those steps and is continuing, is now returned with the elixir and is in their ordinary world and has the opportunity to start again on a new journey. And that person has gotten to that point where it has been, their innermost cave was as dark and dismal and horrible as anybody can imagine. But where they started had no resemblance of that. Where they ended up, where they are now, has no resemblance of that. And I want to introduce to you guys a person who doesn't see themselves as a hero, but I guarantee you is a hero to a very many people because of the work that she does. And that's Miss Jenae. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks.
Pull the mic a little closer to you.
Okay, there we go.
Get right on that thing.
Okay, right there?
Yeah, maybe a little even closer still.
Like that?
There, that's
okay.
pretty good, yeah.
All right.
So we were talking before the show, and you mentioned, when I was telling you about the whole hero's journey, you said, wow, that's eerily similar to some of the crap that you've seen or you've gone through or you've done, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so as I'm going through it and I'm thinking about it, how can I gear this to show this? And this was the best option one of the best options that I looked at, and I said, you know what, this is exactly what it is and who she is. And what I was hoping was that I was correct when I asked you if that's correct. And you said, oh my gosh, that is exactly, I mean, because I've seen a lot of stuff. You've had those dark caves, you've met your allies and you've enemies and your mentors and all these people who changed your life. And in the stories that we read or watch movies of, we don't think of it. We think, okay, that's cool. Yeah, and it's going to end up, and we're going to watch credits. I'm going to finish my popcorn, and we're going to go on with our day. But we don't realize that our everyday life is that way. And you have that exact thing. Your everyday life is this story.
Yeah.
So tell us, who was Jenae? What was her ordinary world? Who was she when she was a little kid? Little Jenae, what did she do? What was her thing?
I struggled with a lot of health issues when I was younger. I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household. I had my dad played music, and so I was constantly around all this like rock star style type of life. There was people like drinking around me constantly. We were always at parties. There was always parties at my house. You know, it was normal for me to see people doing lines of meth on a mirror. And that's kind of started happening around like the age of 4. And then it just progressively got worse. Both of my parents were, in their active addiction. And then, a lot of my childhood is blocked out. I believe because a lot of that was from, sexual abuse. I had said something and they never figured out exactly who it was or what the situation was that happened. But I blocked out a lot of my childhood from that. And then also from the, I believe I was a carrier of osteomyelitis.
What's that?
It's a rare bone disorder. And so I had fractured my knee and the bacteria came out of my bone and started eating my bone away. And I had to go to the hospital and get shot full of nuclear medicine. And I was only like 2 years old. So,
wow.
And I still remember them, shaving my head to fit another IV in my body because there was no more room in my body. So it was like one of my first memories that was like super traumatic.
Wow.
Let's see. I went to, my parents ended up, my mom and dad ended up separating, when I was 8 years old. And my dad was in a wheelchair. He had a bunch of arthritis issues and, he ended up, in a wheelchair and my mom ended up leaving and moving to Portland. I'm pretty sure they were still in their active addiction at that point. My dad and I were in this tiny little apartment. And I ended up quitting school after my mom left at 8 years old to tend to my father in a wheelchair. So, that started that whole, codependency and putting somebody else's needs before my own at a super young age. And then, my dad got a little bit better. My dad was pretty successful too. He worked for Intel and ended up, being a web graphics designer for a local company around here, that, got pretty big. And I think they sold stuff online, kind of like an eBay, but a little bit different than that. And then he was like a lab chemist at another place. He was pretty successful, super smart. He was a good dad, right? He was a good father. He just was an active addict in his addiction. It took me, a long time to realize that, you know what I mean? When we're in our active addiction, it's that, it's the drug. It's not, who we really are inside. It's the drug that, you know what I mean, takes over us. Yeah.
So you going back and talking about that portion where you said you're just missing time or you blocked out a big portion. What ages was that?
I have little bits of memory. I think from the bone disease and the hospitalization I remember a little bit of. And then probably not till I was 8 years old when my mom left. That was that next super impactful time So
everything else was kind of a blur.
Everything else was kind of a blur.
And I mean you obviously learned stuff. You learned whether it was math or reading or writing or whatever school taught you. You got that stuff that soaked in, but life lessons weren't necessarily prevalent.
No.
Those things that hey, this is good, this is bad, this is because all that was a blur. All it was, hey, they say this is bad, but this is what we do. So it's not bad. It's just good or whatever the case, right?
Yeah. I was literally taught to cope with my feelings by using drugs and alcohol because that's what I was shown.
As a little kid?
As a little kid.
So it wasn't so much what they said, hey, do this. It was more like, hey, this is what we do. And so you had no other decision, no choice but to, hey, I'm learning by watching.
By proxy. Yeah.
And so you get up to that 8-year-old point where now you realize, okay, mom's gone. And what happened there?
So I ended up quitting school to take care of my dad, and it got to the point where the principal of that school had actually came to my house to find out what was going on and to see if I was okay. And my dad ended up calling one of my uncles, and my uncle came and got us, and we moved in with him. At that point, it was still pretty much the same environment. Lots of drinking, lots of mental illness, lots of criminality, lots and lots of criminality. And I ended up finally getting stable. I think I had gone already to 6 different schools at that point.
Wow.
And so no stability, no routine, no right and wrong, really. And then I ended up finally getting stable for the first time in a school system. And
at what age?
About, I think it was 9. I was 9 years old.
Okay.
When that happened. And then I started making friends, and then was always the class clown and funny, and was always making people laugh. I think it was because I was just I was forced to be the new kid all the time. So it was like, it kind of made me able to be really quick to, oh, hey, I'll make this person laugh.
That was the way that people would like you, because you didn't know who you were per se.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you also had a lot of, you wanted to hide what you knew was negativity, and you wanted to hide, hey, no, that's not me. I'm this, I'm happy, not this
right.
criminal stuff or this evil stuff or whatever the case may be. Right.
Yeah. All the dysfunction. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And so then you're 9 and you're trying to figure out, and you're being the funny class clown. And was that working? It worked for a while that way?
I mean, yeah, it worked for a while that way. I think I had more stability at one of my friends' houses with her parents. And I tended to, retreat there a lot. I'd stay there with her sometimes for the whole summer. She ended up being my best friend. And I found more stability and security and safety in someone else's home besides my own that I was living in.
Right.
So I think by 12, I had created all these friendships and these relationships with people. And it was like that first time I felt that sense of security, like I was saying. And I ended up, I think my mom had came and picked me up twice from the time I was 8 until I was 12 for a summer. So I went and stayed with my mom a couple times during those years.
Right.
And a lot of it was still kind of the same. She was still, interactive addiction, and would take me to concerts. And I think there was a point where I had gotten in her car, and I think I drank a 6-pack of hooches with a friend and got in her car, and I thought I was going to go cruise downtown in the city with this girl I'd been hanging out with. And I ended up trying to let off the clutch because I didn't know how to drive a stick shift.
At what age? How old were you?
I think I was 12 when this happened.
Awesome.
And I had tried to back the car up, and I was going too slow for my friend. And my friend's like, no, let me do it. And I didn't know how to drive a stick shift.
Right.
And so she lets off the clutch, and the car flies back into the apartment complex and bends the whole door into the front fender. And so I just, at that point, literally wrecked my mom's car. And the only punishment that I received for that was not being able to go to a Big Stink concert.
There was no grounding,
no
spanking, no whatever.
No spanking.
At 12 years old,
At 12 years old. So, and she had left me at her apartment with my friend by ourselves,
right.
unsupervised. Yeah.
And it shows that there is a lack of attention to you. And I'm no psychologist, so forgive me if you are a psychologist and you're listening to this and you're like, okay, they're already diagnosing you, right? but my way I'm looking at it is you're being this class clown, you're trying to have fun, you're doing all these things because you're not getting anything from anywhere else, and you're needing something from somebody. And whether it's the kids at school or the teacher or whatever. Yeah. Were you getting in trouble at school, or was it just being funny and hey, Jenae, settle down. Okay, we got to finish doing whatever. Okay.
Yeah, very high energy. I think I was told by one of my teachers I had moxie and to never lose that. Mm-hmm. So I was always just really high energy and really happy and positive all the time, which was really weird considering the circumstances.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't really get in trouble at school a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you go through this portion where you're going through school. Was it like that? So you're 12, starting junior high.
Yeah.
And was it like that throughout your whole junior high school years? or did things start changing?
I was saying, like, I had stayed at that one school for a longer period of time than any of the other ones. And my dad and I and my uncles had moved over to a different place. And my dad had ended up finding out that he was diabetic. He didn't take care of himself. He was still drinking and using meth on the weekends, still playing music. He ended up getting an addiction to methadone. And because it took away his pain, he was trying to self-medicate.
Oh, okay.
And we had just gotten our taxes back, I believe. And I had just switched schools, and I was pretty upset about that. I remember being upset that I had to move from one school to the next again because I had already gone through so many different schools. And he ended up, I think he bought like 14 of them or something from someone. And he had taken like 6 or 7 of them, and it sent him into renal failure.
Wow.
So he literally like came out of the bedroom on a Friday morning and had yelled, "Help me." And then my cousin Chris and I ran into the room to help him and give him CPR, and he puked up bile and pretty much died right in my arms.
Wow.
At 12 years old. So that was like super traumatic. I think I had nightmares from that for a long time afterwards.
I could imagine.
Like to the point where it caused that memory loss, right? And that brain fog again. So it was like another super traumatic event that had taken place that, my dad was my safe spot, as dysfunctional as it was, he was the only stability that I had because my mom had left, and pretty much abandoned me.
Right.
So and that's what it felt like,
Yeah. I can only imagine. I mean, at 12 years old, you watch your dad, you watch him die in your arms as you're trying to do the saving of him, and it's not working. It's everything you're trying is not working. And then you're probably thinking, what am I doing now? What do I do now? Because he's no longer there. Because I would assume if you knew him as your safe spot, and he took as good a care of you as he was capable of, I guess. You invested a lot, and you told him things that you didn't tell anybody else, and you were able to talk to him, correct?
Yep.
And that's gone. Where were you at this point? I mean, were you still, obviously you can't change your high energy, but did it manifest into something else than comedy, or did you try to mask everything with comedy?
So I ended up calling my mom. I don't know. That just made me think of a story because as my parents being in their active addiction and my dad being an active addict, like responsible, but still an active addict. Like with work, not like taking care of himself, obviously. But, I remember he had caught me smoking weed before school, and he was like, "Why are you smoking weed? You're never going to learn anything if you're smoking weed before school." And then here he is doing meth and drinking on the weekends.
Well, he's done learning. He's expecting you to, yeah.
So after that, my mom was called, and then my mom came to get me, and I ended up moving up to Portland with her in this really super bad situation because she was still in her active addiction on and using meth. So there was my life again, completely uprooted, and I moved and went to a totally different school once again.
Right.
The places that the house that we were staying in was my mom's room had gotten broken into while she came to pick me up. It was just, these people that were using meth.
Right.
And so it was like that same environment all over again for me. Shortly after that, I ended up, trying meth for the first time at 13. It was an older woman too that had given it to me, that was actually part of was living in the same house as me and my mom were, and she was like a roommate or the guy that owned the house or something along those lines. But I remember doing that for the first time, and it changing the way that I felt, and it just seemed like a normal part. Like, oh well, my dad did it. My mom did it. My mom's still doing it. So I might as well. It's my turn now, right? Like this is the furthest that my perception is perceiving, is that I'm meant to be an addict and this is how everybody lives.
Right.
And so, like through that, I ended up losing my virginity to a 26-year-old dope slammer that was super racist. And that kind of, and I was only 13.
Sure.
So my mom didn't teach me, right? Like, this is not safe. This person's a predator. Like,
don't go near this person. Don't go here. Don't do this. Don't do that. It was more or less
free for all. I got to do pretty much.
You can get yourself a glass of water. You can make decisions for the rest of your life.
Right. So I was never really taught, and sometimes people are like, well, how did you not learn that in school? Well, I didn't really go to school. And when I did go to school, I was so busy trying to put on this mask and this fake facade that I wasn't, you know what I mean, paying attention, right? Or I'd use drugs.
Right.
So that was like that first time I had had that experience with a predator, and didn't really realize that until I got older, right? And my life changed.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just like one predator after the next, pretty much, for a long time after that.
And it was all these folks who were either staying or knew your mom or their roommates, or because parties every weekend or every night, or people were coming, going all the time.
Yeah. My mom was like running around with biker clubs. She was, still using, so that happened for about 2 years till I was 15. So at 15, I had met my kids' dad. And my kids' dad was 7 years older than me as well. Okay. So, and my mom was like, oh no, he's a good guy, it's okay. Like, and so she kind of approved of the relationship. Well, my kids' dad ended up saying, hey, you probably shouldn't be using meth. It's not good for you.
Oh, finally a voice of reason to come into your life.
Yeah. And, he's like, you should change and do something different. Well, I had completely destroyed a relationship with my best friend, because it was actually my best friend's uncle at the time.
Okay.
And so we ended up, getting together, and I completely destroyed that relationship with my best friend, one of the people that was, all that I had at that point.
Right.
So we got together, and then he's like, yeah, you should quit using meth. And so I go to my mom at 15 years old that, I barely have a relationship with. And, there was points where I would walk in the room and she'd be asleep with a meth pipe in her hand, it was, and it was never like be home before dark, or
it was none
what I mean?
Yeah, there was none of that. Hey, dinner's at 6, make sure you're here, or before the lights come on, I want you bikes put away, and I want.
No.
Yeah.
Nope. Anyways, so I go to my mom and I'm like, hey, I don't think we should be really doing meth anymore. And she's like, I was like, I'm going to go live with grandma. So my grandma was actually one of my safer places, and I knew her that she lived, up in the mountains somewhere. And,
right.
So I was like, yeah, I want to go get clean and change my life. And, she's like, okay. And so we ended up leaving. We're, leaving where we were at, and going to my grandparents' house and getting clean. And my kids' dad ended up coming with me, and I think I stayed clean for about maybe 6 months, and then he just ended up to doing meth with me. And so it had started that whole process again, but my mom stayed clean. My mom's been clean off meth since that day happened when I was 15 years old. And then so after that, I got, I'm trying to think, let me see. I got pregnant at 17. I had barely been to school. I think I ate a bunch of meth, and I puked up the paper that I had eaten it in. Mm-hmm. And and I was like, there's something wrong with my body. My body's rejecting meth. There's something wrong with it. So I was like, what's going on? So I went and took a pregnancy test, and I was pregnant with my daughter. Okay. And, so I had quit using. Mm-hmm. I quit using when I found out that I was pregnant. And, I had my daughter, and then got pregnant with my son a month later, because I think one of my friends in high school had told me that breastfeeding was, birth control. So I just didn't,
Because you didn't know
because I didn't
otherwise.
know because
Yeah.
my mom didn't teach me.
Sure.
Yeah. So I ended up getting pregnant with my son, and then had 2 babies super young. Another pedophile came back from this guy that used to play music with my dad. I pretty much grew up with him and his family. And he ended up coming in and was a drinker and a partier. And of course I just popped out, 2 kids
Right.
and had been clean.
At 17, 18 years old.
18 years old.
Right.
Yeah. And, he started coming around, and then, we started to hang out and have a relationship together. And I ended up leaving my kid's dad for this person. And then, that's when my RA, they diagnosed me with juvenile idiopathic arthritis at 14. So right after my traumatic incident with my dad dying, the doctors had, said that I had like this really bad inflammation problem, and it was in my hands and my feet. And so they had, diagnosed me with juvenile idiopathic arthritis and, started me on, Vicodin at that same age.
Wow.
Yeah. And, so it was like I started, that's another reason why I was using too, after all that happened.
Pain and whatnot.
For pain. Yeah. I started to self-medicate. And then, let's see. So around the age of 23 was when I started getting like really heavy into, like oxycodone and, morphine and fentanyl patches. My doctor had prescribed them to me for my pain.
Right.
And that kind of started getting me really, strung out. Cause I was trying to, do anything I can to not feel the inflammation throughout my body.
Right.
And then, so I had moved out of my mom's house, I think at about 19. And then
With 2 kids.
My kids' dad was up in Portland. We had split up and he had moved up to Portland. And then, I had gotten that new relationship, and then he was also a musician and a partier and a drinker. And so I just kept kind of like following those same footsteps of the things that I was environmentally conditioned to think was okay.
Right.
And then, my criminality didn't really kick in until I found heroin, which was at the age of about 25. And prior to that, I had used, the doctors were prescribing me about 300 oxycodone 30s a month. And, as soon as I realized I had ran into somebody through my criminal family and ran into them, and, they were like, hey, you can get $30 a piece for those on the street. And I'm like, what? And so that like had kicked in this whole criminality thing that like ended up
mindset where I can sell my legal prescriptions and I can get some money. So I can go get other stuff or whatever it is I want to go get. Right.
And, the people that I was surrounding myself with were, that just seemed like it was the, what I was supposed to do pretty much.
And it was normal because that's how you'd grown up around people like that. Who,
yeah.
They just didn't share their criminal secrets or what you can do, how to get over somebody on something.
Yeah.
Because you're 4, you're 5, you're 6.
Right.
But now that you're in your 20s, it's, oh yeah, let's work together. And now you're looking at allies.
Right.
These are allies because you're in your cave, you're in your dark place, and you're starting to realize who your allies are. And I'm assuming in some of those allies, you just started developing some enemies too. Because
yes.
the sword that you thought that you had, which was your meth or your heroin or your oxys, that's not your sword. And I'm going off of the hero's journey metaphor here, where I can say that you're developing your allies and you're developing what it is and who you think you can trust and who you think you cannot trust.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. That's way real. So I was 25 and, taking all my medication from my doctors, and, the person that I was seeing at that time, we ended up being together for like 10 years, but, he had, I was so messed up on the fentanyl and the morphine and the oxycodone that, he was pretty much worried that I was going to die. in the house. And at that point, I think I had just found heroin. I had ended up asking somebody to sell them, and that same person had said, "Oh, well, I can trade you some of this for those pills if you want." And so, and they're like, "It's way better, and it lasts a little bit longer." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll try it," and not really even knowing the depths of what I was about to do.
Right.
I remember taking my first hit off that, and it was like, when I look at it then, it was like probably the greatest thing that I had ever felt in my life. But when I look at it now, it was like it immediately took my soul, my spirit, any form of anything that I thought that I was. And after that, it was like nothing compared to that. There was a point where I was like, I'll never use a needle. I think one of my justification and rationalizations was, if I'm not going to shoot myself up because I don't hate myself that much.
Right.
But I'll let somebody else do it.
Oh, okay.
And so there was multiple times when that had happened. And, it was at that point where, and then the sex and the music and the drugs and the craziness was kind of just still all a part of my life.
It was all just there.
It was all just
you're
there.
in the middle of that.
In the middle of that. And then the criminality piece started to kick in. I think I had gone and went and got to a local medically assisted treatment center. And I had gotten off heroin for, I think, 6 months to almost a year. And then I had moved to Portland and then, moved back. And then, had still, moved back and forth. And so I was still in that same repetitious cycle of moving,
Right.
It had just become normal to do that.
You couldn't sit still in one place.
Right.
And was it something telling you, hey, I've got to move. And then I've been here too long. I got to go again.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I remember trying to get off of it. I had realized how horribly it was affecting me. It was more important than anything, right? It was the first thing I'd wake up and I'd think about. It wasn't anything else. It wasn't, are my kids okay? I had, been kind of responsible there for a little while because I had my medication. So it was like I was able to sell it and make money. And then, I had little part-time jobs here and there, and never really actually had an official career, right? Or, never done anything that, I could be, proud of.
Right.
Besides having my kids, right? That was that first part of, the first time I experienced unconditional love.
Okay.
And
it was you towards somebody else. It wasn't somebody showing it to you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it was 26 or something like that. I had, gone up to my mom's house and tried to get clean there because she knew that I was, that I was doing heroin.
Right.
And that, it was pretty unmanageable. My kid's dad was there for my kids, and stable for them when I couldn't be.
Right.
And I knew I always kind of had that.
Yeah.
So he was always there for him, which is really awesome and amazing. Cause he's always had a job, was never really he could always use and then put it down.
Okay.
It wasn't
it wasn't so overwhelming and controlling of him.
Right.
As it obviously was for you.
Yes.
It controlled you and it controlled what you did and how you thought and what decided how to make a decision. How do you make decisions?
Yeah.
Based off of it. And he was always there for them. He was always able to keep it going and keep it.
Yeah.
And he knew that the relationship with you was not as beneficial because of your heavy addiction, or was it just because you guys just didn't jive? Or
there was a lot of enabling in there too. I think him giving me money and you know what I mean. I'd always call him and ask him for it. I think there was even a point where I had stolen from him, stolen his wallet or done something, which was not out of the. That was kind of out of the ordinary for me. I didn't really, it wasn't until I realized that I was on my way to my first treatment center that I tried to go to get clean. And, I had said something to the guy that was driving me and I was like, I'm not one of those piece of shit addicts that steal from their family And he looks at me and he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you steal all the nights that they stay up late at night praying that you're not in a ditch and dead somewhere.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, that's weird. I've never looked at it that way before.
Yeah, because you're thinking of just taking money.
Material.
Things,
materialistic things.
Was this the first thing that started making you realize life is more than just stuff?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Yeah, that was actually one of those pivotal moments. There was another time when I had gotten pulled over and I had both my kids in my car, and the sheriff pulled me over, and he I still remember it like clear as day, but he looked at me and he goes, "You realize that this guy that's in your back seat right now is not allowed to be around children?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that." And he goes, "Where's Mama Bear at?" Yeah. And I was like, "Mama Bear?" Like, I don't have one of those. Right. What is that?
Right.
No clue of what that even meant, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way I was raised. And,
because you never had Mama Bear.
No.
Right.
No.
So you didn't know that that's what you need to do.
Right.
You love your kids. Obviously, you just didn't know what you were needed, but once he said that, did that now, I guess, water that seed, or that planted that seed, that now you're like, oh, that is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Is that sort of thing?
Yeah. So, I had gone and tried to do that, and ended up contacting that my ex again. We had broke up for a little bit. Ended up contacting him again, and he had came back and to where we were at, and then started that cycle all over again in the toxic relationship, and ended up moving back here. Tried to get clean again. I remember using kratom. I remember trying to, I remember like vomiting it up profusely, trying to get off heroin, and I could not get off of it myself. I'd get to about that third or fourth day, and I would just go right back out. And then of course, like the selling of the pills and the criminality, and my super criminal family had, always been like, oh, well, this is all I know, right? And this is how I'm going to get my needs met. Right. And this is how, I know how to survive. So it was just that continuous cycle over and over again until, so I had met somebody else, left that person, and they were doing heroin all the time. Oh. And it was like right across the street from the apartment that I was in with my kids. I ended up going over there all the time, every single day, because I knew there was heroin there, and I knew I could get more. And I ended up getting with that person, and ended up calling my kids' dad once again. Can you come be with the kids? Because I can't come take care of the kids.
I got to go take care of this heroin over here.
Because there was even a point in my addiction where I looked at my kids and told them heroin comes first.
Oh, wow.
Like that's how serious it was. Like, and I wasn't able to, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I wasn't able to, stop on my own either, and like I said, I had tried one for the other. I had tried to use alcohol. I had tried to use just meth, or, it was like after I did that, it was like, and then watching my dad die, like I thought that was it for me. I thought that I was supposed to die in my addiction and addict.
Right.
And
in your kids' arms.
Right.
Right.
And so, so I had started selling heroin, in this little town that I was living in. And, I started getting bigger and bigger, getting more amounts, because I had this giant habit, right, that I was trying to feed.
Right.
I think I was up to like 3 grams a day.
Wow.
3 grams of heroin a day was where I was at when, I ended up getting busted. I had gone on and done that for like 3 years.
How old are you at this point?
27. Yeah, 27 is when that second part of that last part of the journey started, before stuff really changed. So I was, living in this trap trailer across the street from the apartment that I was in. When I say trap trailer, I'm talking like no power on, No running water, majority of the time.
It just keeps the wind out.
No toilet paper.
Doesn't mean it's not going to drip off the ceiling, but
Right.
the wind is not beating on you all day long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It was just even crazy that we were able to even pay an electric bill. You know what I mean? The way that, the stuff that we were doing, and it was just, yeah, definitely not where I live today.
Right. Right.
So I had started selling it, and somebody had, thank God, somebody had done a controlled buy on me.
Uh-huh.
I think me and my partner ended up going all the way to Vegas to go trade weed for heroin and meth. And one of the local drug task force teams here had GPSed my car, and tracked both of my phones all the way to Vegas and back. And when I got back, they had bum rushed me after they had one of the local police department's cars out in front. And we had literally just got back with these drugs, right?
Right.
and they knocked on our door, and both of us come walking out. Like, I
Can
look
I help
back
you?
at it now. Yeah, why did we even do that?
Because it was. I'm gonna venture to say. I know you're laughing at yourself. Like, am I stupid? I'm gonna venture to say that there's a different power at work at this point. There was something more going on that needed to happen for you.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm gonna get a little more, I guess, metaphysical or spiritual or whatever on this. But I think that the reason that you came out of there is not because of anything you did or had anything to do with what you've done. I think it was because of what was needed to happen to you. So because there's other things that you were expected to do on this planet. And I think that by you coming out there, by whatever planted in your head to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to go do that. Can I help you guys? Are you delivering pizza? What are you here for? How are you? And so I think there's more to it than just dumb blonde stuff. I think there's a reason that you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we both walk out, and this one of the leaders of this drug task force team comes up to me, and he's like, "We have you for a controlled buy, and we just GPSed your car and tracked both of your phones, and we know what you guys have been doing." And And I just start bawling, right? I start crying, and I'm like, "Whoa, this got really serious, really quick."
Right.
And so they're like, "Well, let us just come inside and take the drugs off the street. That's all we want to do. We won't charge you for it."
Right.
And I'm like, "All right." It sounds like that.
Sure,
that sounds like a deal. Yeah, I don't want to go to jail.
Right.
So, we start to go in there, and one of the other officers that was actually part of this task force, but also probation officer. It was like this huge paradigm shift for me when he had asked me who else was in the house, and I told him there was nobody else in there, and he had still put a gun to my back and pushed me into the trailer, And for a split second, I'm like thinking in my head, why doesn't he trust me? And all of a sudden it hits me like, oh, well, that's because I'm a criminal and a drug dealer, and I have guns and drugs and scales and needles and like all this, all this stuff in my house. Of course he's not going to trust me. Yeah. And so that, for some reason, that pivotal moment in my perception shift was like, oh, this person's a human and they're just doing their job.
Right.
And so it was like a weird moment for me where it was like seeing the different sides, right? What side I was on versus what side this hero's on, right?
Sure.
Somebody that does their job that's like helping the community and like trying to, you know what I mean, keep the community safe. And so it was like this, it was just crazy that my perception had shifted so much at that point. And so when they sat me down in there, they were looking around in my trailer and like looking at me like they were more worried about my living conditions than they were about, the 2.5 ounces of meth that I had.
Right.
And so that was like a point of where, I guess now looking back at it, somebody that had actually really cared about me and wanted to keep me safe.
Yeah, that's huge, because you don't, everybody thinks that they're trying to ruin somebody's day, or they're trying to, I think what we always have to remind ourselves of and think about is that we're humans. Humans are dealing with humans. And I'll say it on the podcast all the time. The reason that we're on this planet is to serve other people, is for other people. And it sounds like this person did that for you. Yes, they wanted to get the drugs off the street. Yeah. Yes, they wanted to catch the criminal, and they knew what they had to do. But whenever that happens, there's more to it. There's a person behind this that is vulnerable, that is hurt. That Shakespeare wrote, he goes, "Do you prick me, and do I not bleed?" Meaning, am I just as human as you? Is there a king out there who, if you poke him, he's going to bleed? Right. Is there a drug addict, drug dealer, criminal person who we consider the lowest depths of a drag of society? If we prick them, will they not bleed? We're all human. Right. And everywhere and everybody in between that. And it sounds like he was putting you first. They were putting the human first, just like the deputy that said, "Where's Mama Bear?" Right. Because that's who you're human. You mentioned the word criminality several times. There are people that have never heard that word in that sense. They understand it, but they don't understand that word in that sense. There's that humanity now that is even more pervasive, than more intrinsic to us and who we are, is humanity. And I think that's what we need to remember, and that's what we are. And I think people forget that. People are so interested in I've got to show everybody how cool I am, especially with social media and everything else. I got to show everybody how cool I am and how tough I am, and I'm doing this so I can control over you. So everybody, you see people say, "Well, I've got all this money, I'm better than you. I drive this car, I'm better than you," because they're trying to control over somebody else. If we can just remember that if we can control ourselves, we don't have to control anybody else. And if we can reason with somebody and say, "Look, I understand that this seems cool to you, but you're missing this other side of things. You're missing this other big picture." When I was in the Marine Corps, we had to do this forced march. And we had a full pack on, we had all our gear on, and it was up this super steep hill, more than 6% grade on this hill, and it's called the Grim Reaper. And when you go up there, you start out in your columns, and columns in the military, they go from height. So the tallest guy in the front, shortest guy in the back. I'm 5'6". Where do I stand? So I'm in the very back, and we start climbing this hill. But I'm in okay shape. I'm in pretty good shape. And we start going up this hill. They say, "Stay with your platoon, stay in your columns." All right. I'm going. And I look up, and everybody had their name tags on the back of their packs. And so I knew who the guy was in front of me. And I'm like, okay, I'll just stay behind him. We're good. And I'm holding onto my pack, and I'm going up the hill. And I look up, and I notice that that the guy who was normally in front of me isn't there. I'm like, oh, where's my platoon? Oh, here we go. Because as you start going up there, it starts getting harder. Everybody starts separating out, spreading out. So I'm going up there, and I'm behind this guy, and I'm looking at the ground, just trucking up the hill, and I look up, and oh crap, there's nobody there. And I find somebody else from my platoon. I go over and I get behind them, and I'm just going. Before I know it, I'm behind this one guy named Powers, and I knew Powers was in my platoon. And so I was like, okay, but Powers is like 6'2", 250 pounds. He's a big boy. Yeah. And I was like, okay, wow, I must be walking faster than everybody, because now I'm to the front, because 6'2" and 5'6". They're not near each other in the platoon, in the columns. So I get behind him, and I'm like, man, this is actually pretty easy. This is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And I lift my head up, and I look around, and I start seeing that I'm not going very fast. And so I look past, I kind of step out and look past Powers, and there's nobody ahead of him. He's not at the front of the platoon. And there's nobody. They have taken off from him. My focus was on the ground and on the guy in front of me. And I don't look at anything else. Once I realized to lift my head and start looking around and look beyond that, I realized, oh my gosh, I am deficient in this. So I passed him, and I got up, and I caught up to the rest of the platoon, and there's a time in which you have to do it. And I barely made the mark, because I could have easily passed everybody, no problem. But my thought was, nope, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to do this. This is what I think I'm supposed to do. And this is how I'm supposed to do it. And I'm just going to truck right along, and I'm not going to close my blinders up, and I'm not going to look around me. The minute that I look up and I look around and I look beyond where I think I'm supposed to be, that's when I realized I have some catch up to do. And so I had to do a little bit of running. I had to do a little walking fast because they're like, no running. Okay, crap. So I got to walk fast. Whatever the case was, I get up, I catch up. But the mindset and the reason of this story is because sometimes you have to look up. You have to have something else come in and say, look up and look around you and get out of your line so you can go do what you need to go do, not for anybody else, but for you, because you're important. So when somebody else starts saying that, and it's fortuitous that this guy's name was Powers, and the power
Yeah.
came on that said, turn that switch. The power came on. I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. And so I got out of there. But the idea is you have to have somebody else kind of speak into you sometimes and just say, you're human and you need to understand that I want to see you do better just so you can do better. So we don't have to worry about you and nobody has to worry about you. You can take care of your own business and you're not adding to the downside of society or the downside of anything.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, that
was totally relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a story that I was actually telling this morning to somebody else, but it makes sense that's where we're at, that's where you go. And that's where life takes you. Once somebody puts something into you, you have to wake up and you have to look beyond your situation.
Right.
And you have to look around and say, I need to make some steps. I need to step out and do something different.
I never really looked at it like that before. And now it's like it broke open this whole new world at that point for me, mm-hmm. which is kind of like where my, journey to
where you are now,
to where I am now.
So when he told you that, when he told you, asked you if there's more people in here,
yeah,
and
so
he didn't believe you.
He didn't believe me, and then we had sat down and they started coming through the house, and we told him where all the drugs were, and he had they had like sat there and talked to me, and they're like asking me questions, of course, and they ended up looking around at my living environment, and they're like, how are you living like this? And like, for some reason I didn't realize that it was like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody had really ever actually questioned it or like came over and said that like that in that type of way.
Right.
And, I don't know. I think it was because of that other experience that I had with the sheriff too. And like, mm-hmm. Some of the different, I never really had like a predisposition, I guess, to be against police officers or, but didn't really realize like how much of an impact they had actually had.
Right.
Like until after that had happened. And then, they ended up telling me that I would be offered, a treatment court program. And, so I was like really scared, right? And I wanted to get clean first. And before I went to that court date to get into that treatment program. Mm-hmm. And they, they were calling and checking up on me to make sure that I was okay and that I was going. And so I had gone and, I ended up leaving and, I went to the detox and I detoxed and used Suboxone to detox. Mm-hmm. And this was all before my court date to actually go into this, into this treatment program. Yeah. Right. And I couldn't, I ended up using the Suboxone and then going through the detox. And then on my way to treatment, I ended up getting up there and it was like New Year's. And mm-hmm. I started listening to all these commercials on the radio and I'm like, dude, everybody's out partying right now.
Yeah.
I need to get out of here and go have some fun. Like,
right.
Like not realizing, that I was still like super deeply embedded in
that mindset,
that whole party. And like, this is what you're supposed to do. And,
right.
And, so I ended up leaving and then, I ended up, see, I got back and started using meth first and then started right back on the heroin. It took like 2 weeks or something, or a week and a half. So I had just like gone right back and started using heroin again. And ended up going to jail. I went and signed up at this counseling center that held the treatment court contract, and I ended up signing up there, and they told me to just show up and pee in a cup. And I was like, okay, that's got to be simple enough,
Right.
So I started showing up and peeing in a cup, and I'm showing up loaded every day. Still using, pretty high amounts of heroin.
Right.
And so I go in there, and I had missed a UA, or I missed 2 UAs over the weekend, and then had missed a appointment with the probation officer that worked directly with this treatment court program. And she ended up like knocking on my apartment door to see if I was alive or dead, because she thought that I had OD'd on heroin.
Because no call, no show.
Because no
stuff.
call, no show. Yeah.
Right.
And I ended up turning myself in later that day, and my kids ended up going with their dad, or they were already with their dad, and so they were safe. And I turned myself in, and this huge like rush of probation officers that like ran up to me and then handcuffed me, and I started crying. And they were like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, you are so much better than this."
Right.
Like, and these people like that I didn't even know were like breathing life into me, right? And telling me that I was worth so much more than that, and that I could do something different, right, and better with my life. And so they like kind of all surrounded me, and then they took me to the jail. And that was like the first time since I was 25, since I tried heroin, that I had actually stayed clean off heroin and meth for I was in jail for 41 days, and I don't even remember the first 2 weeks of it.
Wow, because you're so high.
Because
still?
I was so high still.
Wow.
I mean, I have a mugshot from, and I literally look like that girl that crawled out of the ring. Like, that's how bad my mugshot is. Like, and I couldn't even open my eyes for it. Like that, I was still high.
I remember that picture. I've seen that picture.
I was still high in booking. Like, and so.
So let me ask you, when you came back from detox.
Yeah.
And you said, okay, and you went right back to using. What was going through your mind at that time? Were you thinking, I just got to get the next high, or did anything take during that clean time?
I started to feel a little bit better. And then, I don't know, it was just the environment, I guess. I went right back to the person that I was using with, that I was in a relationship with.
Right.
Like, this person was supposed to get clean too, but they didn't.
Right.
And so I went back, and they were still using meth, and I just went right back to that same environment.
Hey, there's some stuff over there if you want to use it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I went right back to the same environment that I was sick in.
Right.
So it didn't, nothing really took because of that, because I knew it was still there when I got back.
Right. So you go to jail for 41 days. 14 of those days are total loss of time.
Yeah, total loss of time. I think I remember a couple different like scenarios happening, but it was like I barely remember it until I think it was like the 15th day, and I started having these lucid dreams. I started dreaming, and like when I was in there, and it was like this really cool experience. Like it almost felt like it was real, like, and I could control my dreams, like in my dreams. Like I would wake up in my dreams and realize that I could control them. Wow. And like do these things in the dream, in like the astral realm, in like this dream world. Uh-huh. And then so like when I started waking up, I like realized, I'm kind of powerful. If I can do that in my dreams and control my dreams, then I wonder what I can do in the waking world. So were you
just going through motions in life then? Were you just going through what needed to go next and what somebody expected out of you, or? Yeah.
So, that started happening, and then, I ended up like waking up, and, breakfast, lunch, and dinner was served, which was like you know what I mean?
That was how you gauge time, right?
That was like, how I gauged time. And also like the first time I had been introduced to any kind of routine like that.
Wow.
Yeah. 30 years old. So, and the first time I was told no.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, I'm getting on a routine and I'm waking up in the morning and I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel better and I'm like making my bed and I'm reading a book. I think I ended up reading a book called The Footprints of God by Greg Ellis, which was like really super spiritual for me. Like, and it ended up like opening up more of my perception on like, religion versus spirituality. And, I like started like wanting to learn more. Right. And then, coincidentally found a book on lucid dreaming as well, which like started making me realize like, there's other things, right, to life than just that, than just using. Right. And then, let's see, I ended up writing my kids a couple letters, letting them know what I was learning in the books I was reading, and like trying to fill their lives with like hope and love and inspiration,
some kind of positivity,
even though that I was in jail. And then, let's see, I was in jail for 41 days. It seems like after that 5th day was when I was like started to get on a routine, started making my bed, started like learning, more stuff and reading and like, had time to like sit and think, about what this big giant decision I was going to make, for my life. And through that process, I was like, observing everybody around me and I'm like, I do not belong in here. Like I'm watching all these other people and I'm like, this is crazy.
Like, were you seeing like the evil that people really manifest?
Yes.
And how dark some people really are?
Yes.
And you're realizing, I thought I was one of the good people. And yet I'm in the same places and it has nothing to do with your personality. It's not that. It's absolutely the choices that you've made in the process of doing life.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
And so you realize this isn't me. Why am I here again?
Yeah. So, I ended up going directly from jail to a treatment facility, a residential treatment facility, because now I was property of the property of the
county, of the state, of
this
whatever.
county. Yeah. And, so I was like, I got told on the way there, like, if you leave, you're going to prison. One of my, I had a downward departure and, it was for 18 months, in the Department of Corrections if I did not complete drug court.
Right.
And, I ended up, being told, this probation officer drove me from jail, picked me up at the jail and drove me to the residential treatment facility and was like, you're staying here until they tell you can leave or you're going to prison. So I didn't really have a choice, you know, like
you looked at your alternatives and your alternative options and you said, okay, I think I know which path I want to take, because now you're choosing your path based off of whether you wanted to choose this mentor or not.
Right.
They've given you, this is where you get to go, and it's by hook or by crook. Let's look at the hero's journey again. They're dragging you out of this thing. You're either going this way or you're going this way.
Right.
You make the choice.
Right.
And they're giving you. You don't even know you have these tools yet.
No.
And you're now in this super dark spot, and you realizing you have to go travel this journey.
Yeah. Some of my family was pretty criminal, so it's like I knew that, like, things worked in cycles and patterns. And like, I knew that, going to prison, it could possibly end up being a cycle, right? That I would just continue to repeat.
Right.
And so it was like, I didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't want to have to experience that if I didn't have to,
Right.
And so, I did the residential treatment, which, I had been running from my feelings, right? That's really what it was, right? It was me running from any kind of feeling, whether it was good, bad, indifferent, dark, light.
Right.
And so I'm getting used to like my feelings, right? And they're balancing out a little bit at the time I was in jail. And then I got into the treatment place and, first shot out of the bucket, the counselor is running a group and she's looking at everybody in the group and she's like, well, you guys are going to think addiction and criminality is all great until you're holding someone you love, watching them die in your arms. And so her poking me like that had clearly triggered my trauma from my father dying in my arms.
Right.
And so I was able to like just like open up the floodgates and like start crying. And so I start crying and I automatically start breathing. And like I'm doing this, like I start realizing it after a few groups that I had just, my body had automatically started like doing this, this coping mechanism that I didn't even realize I was doing until later. But it was like a box breathing technique. It's like where you inhale, you know, for 4 seconds and then release for 4 seconds and like keep continuing
and hold
doing
it out
that.
there for 4 seconds
And hold it out
and
there.
then,
For, And so like my body just started naturally doing that. And so I was like learning how to, you know, I had a coping skill, right? Like I didn't know it then, but, you know, I had learned this coping skill to, you know, deal with my feelings and, started really looking at all my feelings, right? And looking at the, you know, the trauma and the, I don't know how I got away with not grieving my father's death until I was 30 years old. Like,
well, you were 12,
yeah.
right? No,
Yeah.
no, you were 8.
No, my dad died when I was 12.
Okay, you were 12.
Yeah.
You don't, because you don't know how. You don't know what to do.
Right.
And if you were having to be your own parent, you automatically kicked into that point of, I have to take care of things because nobody else is here to take care of that.
Right.
Because I've been taking care of my dad since I was 8. And so now you're at that point, like, I have to take care. So you haven't had that point. So then you go and you start doing drugs, and then you start doing kids, and you start having bad relationship after bad relationship. You're always trying to fix, or you're always trying to lead or guide or do whatever, because these guys aren't doing it, but you're still having to think about your kiddos.
Right.
And so now you're having to go through all these different things of always having to be caught up. And now you're selling drugs, and you're having to, okay, I've got to do this, and I've always look out for the cops, and I've got to look out for this, and I've got to make sure I'm here. You're busy doing other things. You weren't able to look at that thing that was right around you, that was right in front of you, that's saying you need to take care of yourself, because nobody ever told you to take care of yourself. Everybody always told you to take care of other people and take care of whatever you want to do, not what you need to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where you're at, is you just never had that. You never were broken down, or you were never told you're allowed to go do this. You have been told you have to go do this other stuff. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Easy. I'll just go do that other stuff. And now you're told all that stuff is gone. Your only other option is you can go to prison, or you can think about taking care of you. And so that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. And I think, and like I said, no psychologist, but I'm thinking that's why you just had not gotten to that point where you've grieved, because you just haven't been that point. And so I'm assuming by that coming out, it was just a well of emotion, just crazy wave of.
Oh yeah. They were picking it up left. They were picking it up left and right. Yeah. It was, they definitely, it was a safe place. And I don't think I'd ever really been in a safe place and trusted that maybe these people that are trying to help me right now really do have my best interests at heart. Mm-hmm. And so I felt super safe to kind of just like let go and you know, feel my feelings there. And then like had enough courage, right. And open-mindedness and willingness to see that, you know, I knew that I didn't want to, you know, leave my kids, right, the way that my dad left me.
Right.
And I didn't want my kids to, you know, to grow up and continue to see that same cycle, of addiction. And, there was a point in my stay in residential treatment where the counselor I had asked me to write a eulogy as, a woman in recovery and as an addict in their addiction. Mm-hmm. And so
your own eulogy? My
own eulogy.
Yeah.
And when I sat down and wrote that, you know, it made me realize like how I didn't. That's when I started kind of learning about generational curses, right?
Okay. And
like how certain patterns of pain or hurt people get passed down. Mm-hmm. You know, from our parents to our kids to our grandkids.
Right.
And so once I started once my perception changed to that, and I started looking at everything and kind of like that aspect, mm-hmm. You know, I started wanting to break all those things, right? Like I didn't want my kids to have to you know, have to go through addiction or go, you know what I mean? Learn the hard way.
Right.
Right.
And see them get hurt.
Whether
by you or by the lifestyle that you've given them.
Right.
Right.
And through that entire time, my kids were actually kept really safe, which is, I don't even know how that happened.
Grace of God at some point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I started feeling my feelings, learning coping skills, really taking a look at myself and all the things that I had done that, the self-medicating and, harming other people. I remember grieving and crying in residential treatment, being a drug dealer.
You're grieving the fact
I was
that
grieving
you were
the fact that I was a drug dealer because it was all this fake power and control and fear and like this whole lifestyle that that I had been accustomed to for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember crying and like grieving it, because I knew that I was going to be done, right? That I didn't want to continue living like that. Through staying there, I got introduced to this like amazing 12-step program.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up, I started going to these meetings and like meeting like other like-minded addicts that had gone through the same type of thing, and started to feel like kind of a sense of acceptance, right? Acceptance, and I could be myself, and I could talk about all the crazy stories and things that had happened to me, and I started listening, right? I started remaining teachable. As soon as I got into rehab, they started teaching me about the disease of addiction and how my brain works.
Right.
And so, I had already been wanting to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
After I read these books in jail, it was all of a sudden, this thing turned on in me where I was I need information.
Right. There's an empty center that I need to fill with some stuff because there's some questions I have that need answers for.
Yeah.
Right.
And, so through that process, I started learning about, my brain and then how it works and then how the disease of addiction works. And then, how the way that they had taught it to me was it wasn't my fault that my brain was working that way.
Right.
And that, it shuts off a certain center in your frontal cortex in your brain. Right. And so that's responsible for moral fiber, judgment, consequences to my actions. And I didn't realize that, the amygdala part, hijacks it. And then, you can't really think, or you're obsessive, compulsive and impulsive.
Because it's easier to just let whatever just happen as opposed to have a specific goal that I need to face, and I can focus on this, and it's going to be difficult to do because the idea is you want to try to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations, and it's easier just to go to those those comfortable situations. Stay in bed all day. It's easy to do that. I can say it's comfy, it's nice, but if you can put yourself in that thing where, for some people it's not uncomfortable, it's just I'm just learning, I'm just reading, I like reading, and this is they've learned that at a young age. You weren't able to learn that at a young age, and so that's I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
Happening.
So all these, these new neural pathways were building, right? It's almost like I went back to kindergarten, right? They're don't hit people, you know what I mean? So I learned, keep my hands to myself, right? And
don't take things that aren't yours.
Don't take things that aren't yours.
Don't call names.
Yeah. So all this cognitive conscious awareness had finally hit me.
Right.
And so it was I started to realize that my actions have consequences to them. And then I started realizing, all the things I had done, right?
Mm-hmm,
And that, but I realized I could do something different, which was huge for me. I ended up getting my kids back. They started coming and seeing me on the weekends while I was there.
Was there a point where as you're going through this and you're thinking of something that you did, and at the time that you did it, you didn't even give it a second thought. You just did whatever, and it was but then now you're going through this stuff. You thought about that, holy cow, I was very mean, or that was absolutely the worst thing I could have done, or that is not me. Did it shine some light on some things that you didn't necessarily see before? So
there was multiple points where, I had traded some of my friends that I was hanging out with for heroin to the person that I was getting heroin from. I had done that multiple times. I think that, hanging out with these dirty, grimy murderers, people that I could have ended up missing multiple times the places that I was going to, these trap areas, out in the middle of the woods, and I was never really taught to keep myself safe. So it's I was just constantly in unsafe situations, with, people that would probably shoot you if it came down to it,
right.
you know, and, you know, or gangsters, like, you know, people that are like real ones,
not
real ones,
yeah,
not like, like, and sometimes I found those. So it was almost like I sensed I had a sense of safety in those people until I was shown otherwise,
right.
that I could find safety in, you know, a different part of humanity.
Sure.
And then, I think when I was getting read my, all my charges, I think it was, selling heroin within 1,000 feet of a school zone. And when I was getting my charges read to me that day in court, when I opted in, it was a lot of remorse. I remember crying because like all the people that have OD'd accidentally in my house, and then how much I realized like I was destroying my community. Not only that, but like looking at how many, you know, like the fact that I was in a school zone and it was the school my kids were going to.
Right.
And it was like, it was so much remorse. Like I remember bawling because like, I just literally felt like, oh my God, I've just caused like so many people suffering. And, you know, the ripple effect, right? The ripple effect of our actions, every action that we have has a reaction, right? It's like a universal law.
Right.
And so, you know, when I started getting clean and I was in rehab, I realized that, you know, I could cause an effect instead of being affected by a cause. And so
the pause right there. Say that again.
I said, I realized that I could cause an effect instead of being affected by a cause.
That's huge. That is one of the most powerful things I've heard this week, because there's so much truth in that. There's so much good in that we don't realize that the things that we do, they have an absolute effect on somebody else. And we can't always put the blame on somebody else and say, hey, I'm waiting for something else to happen. I'm waiting for this to happen. There was a guy back in the early 1900s. He was born in the 1800s, but he did all of his hullabaloo in the early 1900s. And his name was Carl Panzram. And this guy was evil personified. He's got a book, and he was on death row when he wrote it, and basically there was a guy kind of wrote it for him. He just told the stories of, but his whole thing was, he went through all these schools and stuff as a kid, and they would beat him at these schools. Obviously things were different in the early 1900s and stuff. And he went through all these different things. So finally he said he was pretty proud of the fact that he'd, sodomized more than 1,000 men. He'd, killed more than 20 people, robbed houses and people, stolen more than he can ever imagine. He had stolen so much at one point, and destroyed so much property. I mean, like railroad cars and railways and ships and things like that. He had stolen so much money, he was able to buy himself a yacht. This is in the 19 teens, 1920s. I mean, we're getting ready to go through a depression at that time, and this guy was stealing so much. He had all this money, and so he would go through all these different things. And his time when he was getting ready to be executed, when he ultimately, before that, he had written that his whole thing was that his whole idea was that had all these people not done this to him, he probably wouldn't be who he was. Had all this stuff not happened to him, he took no ownership in the fact that he'd done all this different stuff, that he'd killed people, raped people, murdered, stolen things from people. He said, well, it was because those people did these things to me. And that's, you know, he didn't care how he affected anybody else, but he only cared how everybody affected him. And so that mindset of taking ownership.
Yeah.
That you are saying that you're not letting the causes affect you, you're affecting the cause. That you are the one that's making the difference. You're taking ownership for your life, and you're saying, if it's in my control, I'm going to control it.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible for it as well.
Right.
If it goes wrong, it's going to be on me as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Not anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, having it's ridiculously huge. And like I said, there's got to be a huge psychological component to it that's even beyond our ability to understand it. It's, you know, people that have done tons of research and stuff like that could probably break it down even more. However, I'm looking at it like it's just ownership. It's just taking ownership of your life and the world around you.
So one of my favorite psychologists and like renowned philosophers is Carl Jung. And he actually had like a huge impact on 12 steps.
Right.
And one of his sayings is, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become.
There you go.
And so, you know, like so one of these really cool synchronicities, right, from my higher power, divine intervention, or whatever you want to call it.
I believe in God.
Okay, yeah.
And I believe in Jesus, so we're good.
Okay, all right. That works. Jesus was real. That's the thing. So the same day that my first clean day after I got put in jail is the same day that my dad died in my arms, but 18 years later.
Wow.
So
18-year anniversary.
Yeah. And I woke up clean.
There you go.
So, I started like recognizing these like synchronicities, and it started to, you know, open up my spirituality. Like I was in bed number 4 at this treatment center. And like, so I started following these numbers, these number patterns and sequences, and like didn't realize that it was like all connected. And, yeah. So, you know, I started learning, right, like not taking the path of least resistance. I learned about criminal thinking. Like, can I get away with it? Is anybody going to find out about it? Like, is it going to affect me, just me or other people? Like, so I started learning all these things, right, that I probably should have been taught, like, as a child, like, but I wasn't, right?
Right.
And so, I ended up getting out of treatment and then, going to, you know, going to court every Friday and going to these groups. And I was finally clean.
Right.
Which was really cool, right? Because I was able to show up without, you know what I mean? All these like drugs and like trauma and criminality and like all these things that I had like just worked really hard to like remove myself from. There was a point where I had, when I got out, I ended up trying to go to work with somebody that was an old boss of mine. And she had asked me to get her like an ounce of meth, and she knew that I was in this treatment court program, and she asked me to get her an ounce of meth, and I was like, thinking about it. And she's like, well, I'll give you like $900 for it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can make so much money off you right now. So I realized I was having a criminal thought, right? And I'm like, I called the drug court or the PO, the probation officer.
Right.
And I was like, you need to come get me. I'm not safe. And so at that point, like, it was like that pivotal moment of what path was I going to take, right? Was I going to continue to be this criminal that, you know, was a drug addict and a drug dealer, or was I going to try to do something different? Right. And that's when, like, I realized that how powerful my brain was, right?
Yeah. And it's not that, okay, prisoner this anymore.
No.
It's now Jenae or this.
Yeah.
Jenae or not.
Yeah.
Jenae.
Yeah. And so like I like started realizing how powerful I just kept feeling like I was getting more powerful and being able to like use coping skills and like make choices on my own and like you know what I mean, reach out for help and ask people for help. Which was huge, you know, because I had never really done that before. Right. Like you said, I was always kind of like taking care of everything, or knew that, you know what I mean, this was the way that it was supposed to be. Right. But it wasn't real. Right. And so, yeah, I just like, I got into this program and like just started, you know what I mean, taking suggestion and doing what people were asking me to do, instead of fighting it. Right. You know, instead of like resisting to what reality was, you know, and like trying to take the word should out of my vocabulary, right? Because if I'm shoulding something, then I'm asking it for reality to be different than what it actually is.
You don't want to should all over everything.
Yeah, no.
No, you have an intention. You say, I'm going to do this, or I am not going to do that. You draw the line. You've set your line, and you say, this is where I'm at. If I go, and I'm not going to cross it. If I cross that, I am no longer what I want to be. And so I'm drawing this line at this point. And, you know, you see people have this all the time. I won't drive over the speed limit, because I got in trouble one time and I know I'm not going to drive over the speed limit. And so they've already set them. And so you can say, hey, we can have this person drive. No, we're not going to get there in time because they're not going to drive over the speed limit because they've set that rule. Oh yeah, that's right. You know, you know who you are. Yeah. And you've set that boundary.
Right. And that was realizing I could make rules for myself, right? And then follow them was like, you know, that opened up a whole new world for me, you know?
Integrity's cool. Integrity's a real thing.
Yeah. The people, places, and things. And then, I started to gain trust with people around me. The longer I stayed clean, the longer I continued to work on myself. I started building trust and relationships with these amazing people around me. Started wanting to learn and remain teachable. I think that was huge for me. Wanting to learn why, what had happened in my childhood, or where was the point where, I realized I didn't want to live that way or leave that legacy for my kids. I wanted to do something different for them, right? And show them a new life, or bring this newfound awareness that I had learned of, how to cope with my feelings instead of using over them, right? And how to look at my trauma and grow through it instead of try to go around it.
Right.
And use to not want to look at it or feel it. And so I started realizing that, that was a huge, process for me. You know what I mean? Just to be able to feel my feelings and look at things and get through them without, using drugs.
Right. Having to cope with things like a regular person does, and not someone that needs some kind of external thing to come on and say, hey, this is how you deal with it, which isn't even you dealing with it. It's masking it.
Right.
And then the bad stuff happens because it goes away, but nobody deals with it. Right. It doesn't get handled, doesn't get dealt with, and it doesn't get cleaned up. And then all of a sudden it's just, now you have a pile of whatever, and it's not cleaned. It's not dealt with. And it maybe has gotten worse. It gets infected. And now there's a separation at some point because we've got to cut that thing out because it's not taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because you can't just expect things to handle themselves. If you're in charge of you, you have to be in charge of you.
Yeah. That's an accountability piece,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So you go through this whole thing and you're realizing, you're starting to learn who this person was, and now who this new person is. And it's not the same person. They might look the same, might have some similar physicalities, but it's the mindset of this person is no longer the same, right?
No, not at all.
And so, where did this person go to? What did they do? How did they just continue on this thing? And you're now climbing out of your dark cave?
Yeah.
And you're getting out of there. That you're given these tools to help cope and how to deal with and how to learn, and you're reading books. I'm assuming you didn't just stop at that one book. No.
I kept reading and kept learning and kept, taking suggestion and remaining teachable was huge. Like I said, I ended up having, a couple mentors, right? Like people that I started to look up to that had gone through, their parent ODing and dying.
Right.
And, they had these certifications on their wall and they're like, oh, well, you can, if I can do it, you can do it. Right. And so it was like this, this awakening to, I can have those right on my wall someday. Right. Mm-hmm. As long as I stay clean. Right. And I don't pick up no matter what.
Right.
And like just learning to navigate that, right. The emotions and the criminal thoughts and like, being a parent and living life on life's terms, right? That's like a huge saying in the 12-step community because we can, life's going to happen, right? It's not always going to be butterflies and rainbows every single day, right? We're going to experience the part of suffering, right? That it is to be human, right? Because being human is not all the good stuff; it's all the bad stuff too.
But how do you know the light without the dark?
The dark, right?
You don't know that if everything's light all the time, you don't know that. So if it's Christmas every day, when you were a kid, you were like, well, at least I remember doing this. I wish Christmas was every day. And then you get thinking, do you want new presents every? You don't even get a chance to play with the toys that you got. How do you get? And you start doing that. So if it's light all the time, that's cool, but it's not good.
Right.
You can't have. I love chocolate ice cream, but I can't have chocolate ice cream all the time. If I had that for every meal, it wouldn't be good anymore.
Right.
It would start being just, this is disgusting and I don't want to have this anymore. But so you have to have some dark. You got to be at the bottom of that cave at some point to where you can't see, you can't believe you're there, and it hurts and it's uncomfortable and it's just the worst thing.
Yeah. Getting used to being uncomfortable was huge.
Right.
Yeah. And then the I remember like realizing that, a daily, I started learning about habits, right? And like repetition and like how our brain works on all that, right? And how you can create a new habit or, being in a state of gratitude, for, saying 3 things you're grateful for 30 days in a row, starts to create your perception to see more optimistically instead of being pessimistic.
Right. Step out from behind powers every once in a while, and you'll be able to see that you're not caught up and you have some work to do still.
Right. Yeah.
But if you can start saying, "Hey, I'm here," and you start realizing the positives and the goods and stuff, like you said, 3 for 30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be doing nothing but looking at positive, and you're looking for positive, not just at positive. Now you're okay. I need 3 more things. What am I? Yeah. Oh, I'm happy that I have a rag that I can dust this table off with. Right. Whatever that, but it's positive.
Yeah, there was so during my stay there at this treatment place, there was this thing called a 10th step, and as part of the 12 steps, and it was like a daily reflection of did I ask my higher power for help today? Was I honest with myself and others today? Right. Did I harm anybody today? Do I owe amends today? What's one thing I would change about today? Or and then the last one is what am I grateful for today? So doing that for a long period of time, right? Because that's how doing that for a long period of time is what ultimately ended up changing my perception on like what I wanted to do on a daily basis, or the thoughts that I was thinking on a daily basis. Like I said, how are my actions affecting other people? Right. And then throughout that, I realized, I could have fun in recovery, right? I could go on these events with other people and like, that were in the same place I was, and like that we would go and we would, go golfing, or we'd go hiking, zip lining, or hiking, or like, we were doing all these fun events out in the community. Yeah. And, I just like started kind of integrating into my community and wanting to be a part of and wanting kind of redemption, for all the chaos that I had caused, in my community, and like all the people I didn't recognize and realize how much I had actually really harmed people in my life until I got clean. Right. And like how much it had, how much my actions affected other people. It was that simple, but it was huge for me.
'Cause you've been taking for so long.
Right.
Just for what made you feel good or feel better. Yeah. Not even thinking about what it
even thinking about anything. And then feeling like for the first time, like experiencing looking at the clouds, and like it was like this crazy euphoric feeling like of like being alive. Like and like my soul had and my spirit had like come back to me instead of being non-existent. Right. And so that was like a huge part of it too, Right.
I heard a story yesterday of a guy he was at the beach with his daughter. Every time something great would happen when his daughter really little, 3 or whatever, or 4, and something great would happen, neat would happen, and she would say, "Oh, again," and so he would do whatever, right? Well, they were at the beach and they were watching the sunset, and she was totally just enamored by the sunset. Oh, just watching it is the beauty of it and stuff. A clear night, you just see the sun dip into the ocean, and she looked at her daddy and said, again. And he's like, I can't do that again. That's the last sunset for today. We'll never get that sunset again. I mean, we might have tomorrow, but who knows if the weather's going to be the way it is. That was that moment. And it's like the loss of a friend or a family member or somebody. You can't have those good times again. It's that time, and you lose somebody, let's say, 3-year-old, your kids at 3 years old, you're never going to get that again because you're busy in this other stuff. So when you have what you have and when you see the clouds and you're like, oh my gosh, I've not seen those before, but they've been over my head the entire time. Yeah. I just never looked out from behind wherever I was at to look at that and say, oh, I want this again. Yeah. And so now you can look at it and say, I want it again. I want to make sure I can do this again. And so now you start affecting yourself, which is cool. Yeah. Which is way cool. So you get through that and you start realizing that that life is just worth living. Life is, there's a lot more to it than just this drug world or this crime world or trying to one up somebody else or trying to control something.
Right. Or continuing to be a slave, right?
Yes,
to a drug.
Right. Or on the adverse side, when you think you're being in control, you're actually more of a servant, more of a slave than anything. Yeah.
So, within like realizing all that and, just continuing to show up and I put a lot of trust in these people that I didn't know, this treatment team and this court system. And, because I had felt safe, right. For the first time in my life, like even as a child. And like I said, I had this like sense of security and safety.
Right.
And I didn't really realize that till we were actually doing this, until I realized that's what you know what I mean? That had a huge impact on me, is that feeling safe and secure in an environment.
Doing this as in this podcast? This
podcast.
So all this time you went through all that, you didn't realize it until just now.
Until just now, yeah. Until we started talking.
That's super cool.
So I ended up meeting like these amazing people. I went and did my give back project in this treatment court. You go and you don't volunteer 40 hours of your time, to a community program and, give back to your community. It was part of the requirements. Mm-hmm. And the one that I ended up doing was, a camp for foster children. Mm-hmm. And, I ended up doing, the drama club and, ended up meeting a county commissioner during that time. Mm-hmm. And had worked with her like side by side with this person and started building a relationship with this person. And it was the first time that I was like, I had met like, the judge or like the cop that, was for the treatment court. And like I had met some of these people. And this was the first time I was able to actually get close and build a relationship with somebody that was super successful.
Right.
And super loving, super God-centered, like just this beautiful soul. And, we worked together in the drama club, and I ended up playing like a rapping ram for all these children. And I even wrote like my own like God-centered rap, and rapped it to all these kids in this show. And like, it was like, who is this person? You know what I mean? Like I had never been able to like spread love or like, you know what I mean?
And really let out like that.
And really let out, right? Sure. Or even experience myself in that kind of way. Like I said, I'd always been funny in the class clown and goofy and, but it was always for a different, reason. It wasn't like because I was doing something that I really was enjoying doing.
Right.
It was usually a mask or something that I had on.
You were serving other people in process.
Right. Yeah. And so that's when I realized like how good it felt to be in a position to where I was helping other people. Right.
Right. And
like the way that this whole the whole planning went down for this camp was just like, change my perception again on you know what I mean? How good it does feel, right, to be in service to other people.
Right.
And so I ended up like, having people calling me like and coming to me when they were wanting to use. And they were seeing, how far I had come in the program, and like, they ended up started reaching out to me. And so this treatment court had this mentor program, and I started to become involved in that. And the mentor program is like a program where people that have graduated the program that are known as alumni, they come back and they help walk other people through this process.
You become the mentor.
Right. Yeah. So like I had done all this work on myself and stayed clean and like was, attending all these events and all these things happening in recovery, and ended up being able to be there for somebody else, right, that was going through the same thing I was going through.
Right.
And it ended up being something that I just continued to do, even after I graduated. I graduated this treatment court program and, ended up being on the news for it, which was like my first, like, oh, wow, we're going to publicly talk about your journey and what you're planning on doing next. And I was just like, whoa.
I'm on the news. I'm not a news person. I'm not newsworthy.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And then, so shortly after that, I had ended up becoming the chair, which, we sit on a board, and I was the chair, the president of this alumni club. And it was just, I never thought that I was going to be doing the things that I was doing at that point, like, and helping other people and like going to these events and opening up these events and helping other people, you know, learn to have fun in recovery, right? And showing them a new way to live, right? They don't have to stay in this environment that they're in, and they can get out of their comfort zone, and they can, you know, choose to do something different, right? Instead of continuing to live in addiction and criminality and the chaos and the darkness and you know, all the things that I experienced, right? And sometimes it's just about not knowing. Sometimes people don't know.
Right.
You know?
Because they don't know any different, because they were raised a certain way.
Right.
And that's how they've been told this is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Okay. And then when somebody comes along and says, hey, no, it's not that way, you might get defensive because no, bullcrap, it is that way because that's how I know it is. And that's what I've been told. And I trust the people that told me this. Right. And maybe they didn't know, like you said, that cycle, that generational, just hurt people.
Right. And that's exactly what, a lot of, that's what I'm seeing now, you know, like, so I ended up, doing that. And then, you know, people had seen like the progress, right. And the things that I had been doing and like helping people out in the community and, you know, helping the addicts that were still suffering. It's like there's that saying, you know, if you crawl up out of the gates of hell, you know, are you going to continue going, or are you going to reach your hand back down and help the next person that's down there?
Right.
And like, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing in the process of doing it, until it started getting like, you know, brought into my awareness that I was doing that.
Right.
And so, I was doing the events and stuff like that out in the community and still going to meetings. I ended up getting a sponsor, somebody to walk me through these 12 steps. And, which was highly suggested if I wanted to stay clean, right?
Right.
They're like, do you want to live or do you want to die? It's like jails, institutions, or death, right?
Right.
Those are my options. If I pick up, those are the only options that I have. If I pick up and use drugs again, right? It doesn't matter what kind of drug it is. Doesn't matter if it's just a little bit of pot or some alcohol or some mushrooms, or it's not worth the risk, right? Like using any psychoactive substance is not worth the risk of me going back to that person that I used to be and how serious, you know, 'cause I'll die.
Right.
And that's that life or death, you know, and I that's seriously something that I have to look at all the time because of, you know, the way drugs are now today, the fentanyl that's in everything, you know, and seeing people dying all the time.
Right.
You know, like,
I mean, I've seen it, and I know you've known people, or you've seen it.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? There's a point where you start saying, didn't you realize this would happen to you? And you wish you can go back to maybe somebody that has died, or even that almost died and they're back.
Yeah.
Didn't you realize? And then they're saying, but my addiction was so much more than I had control of.
Yeah.
Which is, you mentioned it from the very beginning that your dad was struggling with his addiction. He was in it. Your mom was actively in their addiction, and all these people that you know are actively in their addiction, and they're fighting this whole battle, and they don't know how to get out of it. But without somebody coming alongside and saying, hey, let me help you, or here are tools, your 12 tools, per se. Do these things and you will have a lot greater chance of success.
And it's still, an addict will look at you dead in your face and say, I don't know. They're still the ones you could be like, here's the chance to save your life, and here's the chaos and disease of addiction. And they'll look at you and still go, I don't know what I want to do.
Because they've not seen the value of their life. They've not been told their value. They've not been shown that they have value. They've been told that you have to do things. You have to do this, and this is going to be the way to get money, or to get chicks, or to get guys, or to have someone take care of you, or whatever the case is.
Well, they glorify it too in society nowadays.
Absolutely.
Like, it's glorified in rap music, and you know what I mean? Like, it's cool to have some Molly and some Percocet and, you know, have guns and you know what I mean? That's what they're...
And not give back, and take.
And take, yeah.
There's no understanding what your value is. And if you have value, if you know what your value is, you're going to be stronger, and you'll be able to stand up and say, nope, I don't do that. I've drawn the line because I know what my value is. And if I go over there, I'm devaluing myself. I'm disrespecting myself and everybody that has poured into me, everybody that has been a part of me.
That's so real. No word, right?
Right.
I didn't realize I could say that, right? That I could hold a boundary and be like, no, I'm not going to object myself to that or be that person anymore. Or, you know, Yeah.
Right. And so now you're going through that, not only as the chair and as somebody who has gone through that, but you're now giving back to everybody that you come across, right?
Yeah. Pretty much saying yes, right? Like anybody that needs my help or, if there was something going on in the community, like I was trying to, just constantly show up, right, for myself and for other people.
Right.
And through that process, I ended up getting a job at, one of the treatment centers in town. And then this other treatment center, the one that, held the contract for the program that I had just graduated. And it was like 8 months later, had said, hey, we want to hire you. We like what we see. And
you want a job, huh?
Do you want a job? Right. And I was just like, what? And it was for a peer support specialist position.
Right.
Which was, lived experience, right?
Sure,
like you got to have lived experience to go and stand at the gates of addiction and chaos and be like, hey, let me help you out of here.
That's cool.
So they had seen that and wrote me an offer letter.
Wow.
Like, what?
And you're like, do you know who I am?
Yeah,
and
what's
never
happening
seen
right
that,
now?
right? You've just never seen that. It's the way you got money was always, hey, can you do this? I'll do this.
Yeah.
And never we need you to do this for us.
Right.
Because you're going to be doing something for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, and then working at the other treatment center before that other one was really awesome too, because I was able to work like really close with the police department. And, just recognizing even more that, you know what I mean? There's a lot of heroes that do that. They're going out every single day and sacrificing themselves.
Right.
And sacrificing for the greater good, right? And to keep our community safe and stop those bad guys, like the person that I was, Right. So like having it go full circle and being able to witness that and see, you know what I mean?
And it's not always the hero that's pulling, babies out of burning buildings and stuff.
No.
It's somebody that's willing to not just look at this as another thing, but to actually go into a situation and look at a person and say like, are you good living like this? Are you happy living in this life? And that makes more of a difference because that happens way more often than the pulling babies out of burning buildings and stuff like that.
And that's okay. So I can see the connection there, like that happening to me and then me now doing that for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is where the hero's journey concludes, or at least continues, because now you're now handing out the elixir. You're handing out this magic thing that says, look, I've gone through all this crap and I've fought these dragons and I've gone through the caves and I've done all these horrible things. And now I'm getting into the point I'm able to now help other people, and I'm able to be that one that is going to be able to help provide. Now, and I'm no Messiah. I would assume you are thinking that you're no Messiah in any way. However, you do know what will trip somebody up, what will keep somebody clean or safe or okay. And you even said before we started today that you are in a place that you continue to get blessed
every day, and
that you had no idea. You are grateful. Your gratitude maintains on a daily basis because you don't see yourself as what you were, but you see yourself now as somebody that's constantly blessed. That's somebody that's constantly getting rewarded for your struggle.
So one of my catchphrases that I've used in recovery is winning. I always say winning all the time.
Winning.
Because, because I'm literally kicking addiction's ass, right? Every day that I don't use. And I wanted to say when I actually die clean, the day that does come when I do pass away and I die clean, I'll be able to say that I won, right? That I fought addiction and looked it right in its face and,
Right. And you fought the whole time because it's not over.
No.
You continue to fight that dragon on a daily basis. It's just easier to fight him now because you have all the tools.
Tools, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
See that, and that's cool. And so, by the fact that you're able to humble yourself and say, I was horrible. I'm not horrible, and I know how to help people get into a better spot now as well. I'm willing to share what I've learned.
Yeah.
That makes all the difference in the world, and I think that's why we're on this planet. Is to do that for other people, because some of us have to go through that. some of us have to go through that in order to become, what it is that we're meant to do.
Yeah.
The reason
it's crazy how that all worked out, and like I get to use all my life experiences and wisdom gained through, lessons in my whole entire life, like to be able to.
And you're not even very old right now.
No.
Because you can only imagine the next 40 years, what you could do.
Yeah, I know. It's like endless.
Right.
The possibilities are endless, and that just gives me hope right there. Like,
Right. Because you'll even be able to, and you'll be able to talk to your kids about like, hey, this is this, and you're open to it, because there's a chance they'll be listening to this one day. Hi guys. And, and they'll be hearing, this is mom's story. This is who mom is. And that my life could have easily been that way as well. And it's not, because by the grace of God, they're not in that position.
No. Yeah. And being able to give them that awareness, of drugs and criminality and trauma and, and teaching them to, feel their feelings instead of use over them.
Right.
And the awareness of, even older guys with my daughter,
right.
Like that's not okay.
Right.
Right. Like,
yeah. Get away. Yeah. I know what's going through your brain.
I think there was a situation that happened with her at school with a friend, and she's like, "Oh, that is not your boyfriend. Like, you're a victim, honey." Like, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
She said that?
Yeah. And I'm like, so obviously me getting better, right, and really coming to all those conclusions was able to pass down to her, right, and so she's not gonna be a victim,
because you can show that humility. You can show that humility to them, and anybody that does any kind of leadership or anything like that, humility is the number one thing that you need to have.
Yeah,
because you have to show that hey, I don't know everything, but I know where I can either ask for it, or I can look it up, or I can try to figure it out. Let's try to figure it out together.
Yeah.
You put your team first. In this case, you put your kids first, or those people you're trying to help first.
Yep.
And you just say, yes, I screwed up. I did a lot of bad things, and I could have died for it, but I didn't. And I learned a lot of lessons. And what I'd like to share that with you. And I will tell you that if you do what you're doing, you will die, or you will go to prison, or you'll do both.
Yeah.
Who knows? But because I've seen some stuff, and it's some stuff that I couldn't even imagine, because I've gone a totally different path. We know each other because of our paths have crossed, because of you were in a world that you were in. I'm a police officer, and I know how things work.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but I had to learn that, not by doing, but by watching. And it was a totally different thing. And it took me longer to watch it and learn it than it took for you that you lived it. And then you had to learn how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And it was way more detrimental to you than it was for me to try to figure out what it is that life entailed. And, but I do know that people are people, and we all go through different things, and we're all humans. And like I said before, the king, you prick the king's finger, he's going to bleed. You prick the lowest level person in the world, they're going to bleed. We're all humans. God put us on this planet for a reason, and that's to help each other out. And I think that's why we need to be who we are. And he gave each of us different skills, different abilities, different mindsets.
Yeah.
And sometimes we had to go through crap in order to develop those things so we can serve other people.
Yeah, I definitely feel like everything that's led up to this point right now is me walking in God's purpose for my life, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so cool. That is so cool. So what's next for you? What's next? What are you looking at? You just keep it on this path? Or
just kind of like, I don't really like force or like resist a lot. I kind of just like let things happen. Mm-hmm. And so far, by me not forcing and me not resisting, it's led me to where I'm at right now.
And are you just looking at doing this, or do you have goals that I want to make sure I go to Paris, or do you have a goal that you want to do whatever?
Yeah. There's definitely some goals for that. Right now I've been, I just got married, and, my kids, I'm a present parent in both my kids' lives.
Yeah.
Watching them grow up and them achieve things and like win awards, or like learning how to play guitar, or, doing these things that, I didn't get to experience in school, right? In high school, like my daughter's about to go to prom. Like I didn't get to experience that. So,
right. And you wouldn't have had anybody there to take pictures of you if you were.
Yeah, probably
right?
not. Yeah. So that's kind of that's kind of like where my heart is right now is family.
That's cool.
And for not having that in the way, my environmental conditioning, not having that in a healthy, safe aspect, being able to transfer that to my kids right now and my partner and the people around me, is probably, that's what feels right now,
That's cool.
And then my work is not really like a job, right? It's like I get to go to work and be myself every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get to be like, hey, this is what I did and this is who I used to be. Sometimes I even throw my mugshot up there and I'm like, dude, look, if I can do it, you can do it.
Right.
Right. There's no excuse.
Right. There is. Yeah. Oh, you think you're bad? Check this out.
No.
Yeah. And see, that's cool. And the fact that you can maintain that, you get to be your super jovial self and open yourself up to the world in that way. That's huge. And we need more people like that are willing to put themselves out there and say, yeah, that is me, but willing to do it in an opportunity to serve other people. And that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't get that a lot. We don't have that opportunity. I mean, it always pops up, that ability to serve other people, but not in this way, not in the way that you have it, where you get to be very open, honest, and lay every card out on the table.
Yeah.
Be very vulnerable. And it's huge. And the fact that you agreed to come on today, that I couldn't thank you enough for doing that and telling that story, because it might be embarrassing for some people. It might be hard to tell, but I think it's needed, because if somebody else is in that position, or we know of other people in that position, we know that there are ways out, and we know where we can go to go do that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So if somebody has family members or something that need to get out of that world, what would you suggest that they do?
I would, I don't know. For me, it was, sometimes you always get that they call it a nudge from the judge, right? And sometimes it takes them getting a lot of, criminal charges to get out of that. I don't know. The thing that works the best for me is meeting people where they're at.
Right.
And sometimes you can only do that through, lived experience, but,
do you see that having a relationship with the people first makes the difference? And I mean, like, you can't just have somebody walk in a room and you walk in the room, you don't know each other, and just say, hey, you need to stop doing stuff. No,
it's about building a relationship with somebody.
Right.
Yeah. First, right. The trust and the safety, and I can see how that relates to, what I mean? Me too. But, addiction's a beast. There's a lot of people that don't get it.
Right.
There's a lot of people
just
be
need
like,
to stop
here.
doing drugs.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Like, especially with all the environmental conditioning, right? And people being in a totally different world than you think that they're actually in, because of how they've grown up and how they were raised.
Right.
So I think just instilling hope, right? And letting them know that, there's another life out there for you, right? And it's just waiting for you, right? But these are the things that you got to learn. These are the things you got to do, right? You got to be uncomfortable. You got to get out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
You got to reach out. You got to ask people for help.
Yeah. Where would people, are there online resources people could go to?
Oh yeah. There's online resources for meetings. There's online resources for.
What would people look up? What would they look for?
So anything that's like has to do with, addiction and behavioral health. Like, cause sometimes there's, there's, mental health, that coincides with, addiction. So, sometimes those two things go hand in hand.
Right.
So like, kind of like trying to find out if it's, one thing versus the other.
Right.
First, and then so they can both be worked on in treatment together. That, and then, the, 12 steps, right? Like the AA and NA, those are, both, that's how I've managed to stay clean. That's what's actually worked for me, is I'm like on my 11th step right now. And, that's that higher, that conscious contact with my higher power.
Right.
That's what's kept me clean.
Yeah. And that's cool.
Is doing what's suggested through that program.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, Jenae, I want to thank you for coming on today and talking about this stuff, and that it's not easy, and it's the question would be like, well, why are you having that's not a I guess classical hero, but it's you went on that journey, and now, to be honest with you, the people that you are affecting, that you're helping now, that really need you're that hand that you needed at one point, and you're now being able to talk to people like, are you good in this lifestyle? Or really? You really comfortable living like this? And you're able to ask that question.
Yeah.
And do it honestly and from a position of not judgment, but more of,
I've been there
and you can get out of here. So that's really cool.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah. So everybody, if you want to get more out of the What's Your podcast, you can find us on we're on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, and we're on Twitter, and we're on LinkedIn. You can find us there. You can find the What's a Hero podcast on the what'saheropodcast.buzzsprout.com, and you can find all of our previous episodes, and you can find has links that will take you to whatever podcast platform you like to listen to the show on, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or Google or whomever, and you can listen to us there. Subscribe, download episodes. Downloads help us. It helps me know who's listening. I do have a thing that I can see people listening all over the world, and I want to thank every one of you guys that does download from wherever you might be, from Europe or South America or Australia or all across the country. Thank you so much, you guys. I appreciate it. Tell your friends about it, and go on the social media and listen to, or at least chime in on what you liked about some of the episodes, because I'm open to just answering some questions with you guys. And so if you get a response, it's going to be from me, not going to be from my team, because my team is me. So nevertheless, share it with your friends. Download episodes. If you're going to take a flight somewhere, you're going to go on it. You can't listen to, you don't have internet on the flight or whatever. You have this, you'll have the show after you downloaded it. You can, share it, let everybody know, and then you'll have those copies with you. So either way, I appreciate everybody for listening in, and I know that you guys are out there, and I appreciate every minute of it. To our law enforcement, our firefighters, you guys rocking it. I appreciate, we support everything you do, and I can't say enough support that we have for you, and we appreciate you guys keeping us safe in the country, the best country we can live in, because of you and because of what you do for our society and for our community. And Jenae's over there just pumping her fist like, heck yeah. EMTs, you guys, nurses, thank you so much. You guys face it every day, and you're sometimes the unsung heroes, and I appreciate everything you do, because you're there when we need you. And to our teachers, helping our kids become better and teaching them and actually and showing them what life really is. Keep doing what you're doing. Those of you who are putting kids first, I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And to our veterans, always ready to step out on the front line and keeping our country the country that it is. So we thank you so much, all of our heroes, and everybody out there working for other people, which is great. Jenae, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with the folks out there in podcast land, wherever that is?
Woo woo. Thank you for the opportunity to be on here, and I hope that something I said in my story instills hope, or just hope everybody prays for the still suffering addict.
Yeah, I agree. If you're struggling, reach out. And that's the same thing we talk about all the time with addiction, or with trauma, with PTSD. If you're struggling, reach out. And if you see somebody struggling, if you have a relationship with somebody, you see them that they're not the same, they're not normal, they're not their same person, they're struggling with something. Yeah. Speak up and ask them what you can do for them, how you can help them out. If you remember, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman says, please tell me what's wrong, or I'm sorry this is happening to you, or I will do everything in my power to help you. Those 3 things would help immensely. So if you see somebody struggling, come alongside them, help them out. Be the hero that they need right now. So for Miss Jenae, I appreciate you coming on. I've been Ken Fraunfelter. This has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.